as it is. It goes that's an old adage just on an individual player level. And it's a group we really like. And we struggled with kind of waiting for it to turn this year. I just never quite got there. But yeah, like I said, trying to figure out what has happened, what's predictive, and how those things intersect is one of the harder parts of our job. And it's hard to see the future, but we'll spend time on that and every other area. Yeah. Yeah. When you say defy the stereotype, I just want to make sure I understand you. When you said that, meaning, oh, yeah, no, yeah, great. It's a great question. I think so. I talked about the bullpen of like, oh yeah, they'll just be better next year because like they're underlying indicators that are typically a better predictor of what's ahead than the performance in those tight games only is certainly there. At the same time, you don't get to say all the great things that happen. Oh, those are going to continue, and all the bad things are just going to get better, right? Like Junior Caminero, Aranda, Yandy, Brandon, those four had incredible years. You can't just assume that's all going to stay right there. You need to build a team that can protect, them coming back to little, earth a little bit. Like that's part of baseball. I do believe this is a team that, we went in this year, and I think it's similar place next year. You need those guys to continue to develop a little like 22. Like I 23 was a lot of fun. I'm not foreshadowing that, but I do think this team is in a place where the right ads and a little bit of development, and our record is meaningfully better than it was last year. The run differential, that doesn't matter for our record this year, but there are other things that will speak into the quality of the team when you look forward a little bit more than your record itself. And do believe from the healthy pitching, getting Mac back, Cammy around it. Like I said, those things. I don't want to say we're one piece away. This is a really good division, and it's not about to get any weaker. This is probably going to be a division that has 5 really good teams in it next year, and expect us to be one through development of the players we have, and ideally, an ad or two to best complement it.
Eric, I know over here.
Oh,
yeah.
Hey,
Hey, how are you? I know everything you said in your opening statement. Obviously, so appreciative of Steinbrenner Field, Yankees allowing you to have the season you had, and the fans to be out here on the other side of the bridge. Just when you look back at the season, and you kind of mentioned moving to the Trop, just for the fans to understand, what were the difficulties of building a team that wasn't necessarily made for Steinbrenner Field, and what are going to be some of the things that you're looking forward to next year, of where it's like, okay, some of this stuff is going to normalize next year?
Yeah, it's hard to live on a friend's couch for 6 months, even even if they're incredibly welcoming. Look, it's no excuse for anything from a team building standpoint. We had an assortment of arms that are pitched to the top of the zone, above the zone, and early, we went through a stretch where we couldn't seem to win here, and it felt like the wind was blowing out to right when we were pitching and blowing in from right when we were hitting. It was weird. I don't think that was the reason we ended up with the record we have, but it's Chandler Simpson, Jake Mangum. This park isn't like they're built for bigger parks, right? When you put the ball in play, when you have speed, those are players that playing in a place like this, they're not that sensitive to it. Pitchers that pitch with power and pitch up, yeah, you just run the risk of getting bit a little bit more. We did give up a few more homers than we would have liked, but that wasn't all at home, but um it's as much just the familiarity. You're visiting, you're renting, you're just continuing to learn an environment all year. And again, it's no excuse for our record, but the Trop is our home. That's what we're used to. That's what we know. And it's a place where day in, day out, you're very aware of what you're going to get, right? You can hold your routines. There's no disruption. And that's something that over time, we've leaned into that, and I think you've seen a demonstrated home field advantage in our record because of that. And goes a lot more than the dimensions or the lack of third deck and the wind and the lighting and all these things. It's home, and there's something to be said for playing at your true home. I got you. Yeah. 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 I remember talking last year on option decisions, and um, like we made a few trades at the deadline. Um, those are two players that, or three players with Taylor. Um, they're still here, and so in that sense, I think that's indicative of, kind of where we are. But that's we got to get into, a greater understanding, kind of to John, to your point. I think we expect to be a competitive team next year. How do we improve ourselves? What kind of money is required? How you need to allocate it will be a consideration as we get in the winter and find the right mix. But um, Pete and Brandon focusing on them because Taylor's still in the arbitration process, depending, regardless of the option decision there. Those are two players that have meant a lot to our organization. We appreciate them both greatly, and going to go in this winter and just see how we can best configure this thing to win more baseball games next year. But nothing. I mean, like I said, we didn't move them at the deadline, and usually that's a pretty good sign of how we feel about them. The great philosopher. First time for everything. Yeah. Yeah, better than me. I mean, I'm ultimately responsible for. We have a great working relationship, and there's a lot of we here. But when you're making roster decisions, that's ultimately on me. And last 12 months or so, some of the decisions we made haven't worked out the way we wanted them to, and that's on me. So I definitely would beat myself up a heck of a lot more than I would him. He's this year was hard, but everyone has their hard, and it's our job to build rosters. I talk about the bullpen and that stuff. There's noise everywhere. The Dodgers went through similar bullpen stuff. They just constructed, or I can't quite do it like they do, but it's my job and the roster building group to put a team together that can overcome the ball not bouncing your way. And in the past, we've done that well. We didn't do that well enough this year, or last year for that matter. And Cashie's great, and gets the absolute most out of our groups, keeps them on the tracks. I didn't hear one player make an excuse about being here. I didn't hear one player complain about being here. He set the right example when it comes to why we're here and keeping the right perspective and making the most out of it. And that starts with him, and our players followed suit. So can he do better? Yeah. He's someone that's always learning, growing, looking back, pointing the finger at himself. It's part of what makes him great. But he's wonderful, and I deserve a lot more of the blame for where we are right now.
Marilyn Parker, News Channel 8. A minute ago, you just talked about how, the Trop is the home, obviously. And obviously, finding a home is a big part of what's coming ahead for you guys. So, what can you specifically ask for? What do you specifically need, desire, want from this new ownership group to get the franchise to where you believe it can be?
Oh, man. Can we put a pin in that question until
no, we cannot.
They start talking? No, I said earlier, we have. Basically, since I left college, this is the only place I've known. The entirety of my professional life, I've been lucky enough to be here and work with and for amazing people. As far as I'm concerned, as long as that is able to continue, we'll figure this out. I genuinely believe that. There's, my job in the baseball operations department is to win baseball games. And for as long as I've been here, I've never talked the money and this and that. We're a lower revenue team. That is by definition a lower revenue team. That is what we are. But I don't ever speak to that because we can win and we can figure out a way to do it. And it's because of the people. And by all accounts, Patrick and the group coming in, they care about people and they recognize the people and the quality that are here. Can we do better? Yes. Are $300 million, does it make your job a little easier? Do you have a little more margin for it? Yeah. but there's a team that's also not playing right now that had that. So it's a lot more than that. And as long as there's alignment, and there's good people, we can figure this out. And by all accounts, that's there. And whatever path that takes, I'll be more than honored to take the ride with them and figure out a way to win a championship.
Passing a couple
Yeah.
of different times today. Obviously, Jake and Chandler have got a lot of time out of necessity, but they're very similar players. Two-part question for you. When you need more power production from the outfield, how much does it help that you get so much power from the infield spots where that will help with your decision making? And two, can you see going forward the two of them playing together as much as they did this year or not?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's fun. There's times this year, June in particular, where those two seem to be hitting back to back a lot, and they're just putting the ball in play, and they're combining the hit balls like a total of 50 feet, and they're both on base, and it's a lot of fun to watch them. Is there room for both of them in the same lineup? Yeah, and to what you said, like you can't look at any part of a roster in isolation. It's all about just kind of how it fits together, how different units complement one another. We did get a lot of power from our infield DH configuration this year. Seems likely that we'll continue that next year. I think the big thing is, and it's both sides of the ball. We got to figure out the outfield group. It might be that, we go more in a direction of our outfield becomes a source of extreme contact, of foot speed, that kind of disruption, so that, you're facing somebody that has a nose for strikeouts, those guys can kind of do the work that night, and vice versa. Really, they can work. We need to make sure. I cited the offense. It's the offense and the defense that comes together. If we walk into next year with our infield configuration very similar and our outfield has Chandler and Jake, like that's fine. We need to make sure the defensive side there is to support those types of offensive contributions. But just overall stepping back from all of it and keeping it simple, I think our outfield probably in total run production, depending on your metric of choice, I think was probably in the bottom 5 to 7, and more just love those guys, but from just a pure production standpoint, ideally across 3 spots, you find a way to get them higher. Good. Keep going.
You talked about regaining a home field advantage by going back to the Trop. You've got at least half a dozen position players who don't know the Trop as a home field, maybe half your bullpen, and plus players that you might acquire between now and then, ongoing repairs that'll go right up to it, and an opening season road trip. How do you expect to be able to put all this together so that they get that feeling, the lighting, the whole atmosphere of being at home at the Trop?
Yeah, for some of them, it might take some time, in the way it does for a visitor coming in. But I think that's where the makeup of the group, the competitive makeup of the group, that's where that stuff matters, right? Like just people that'll anytime, any place, anywhere. That's what we had this year. We didn't out talented enough, to win more games, so to speak, but love the competitive makeup of this group. And that's probably something going back into that situation and that setting. You want to make sure you get that right again. But yeah, you do look, as soon as that building is open, any part of it, if we can get in the clubhouse before the field's ready, we'll get in the clubhouse. We'll get guys familiar. If we can get on a strip of turf out there, as long as it's safe from above, like we'll find a way to do that. You just make the most of the opportunities that are there before, we go on a 3-city trip to start before we come home. I don't know, but we'll do everything we can to make the most of however much the building is available before we get going. And, like I said, once you're there, it's home for enough of them that we'll establish the right current with that, and it'll take us where it takes us.
You took more of this on yourself for the roster construction, but do you anticipate any changes with the coaching staff, or do you have those conversations with Cash?
Yeah, no, I gave Cashy a couple days to just to decompress. I had more people tell me I looked tired in the last 4 days than I have in some time, and I did shave and try to freshen up a little to look better here, but tired. Just it's an emotional year. It's a lot from the ownership change, all the uncertainty to playing here, that even down the stretch, you're not playing postseason baseball, and that stinks, but the best thing that we typically can do with that time is give it to our players and make sure every moment goes into helping them make the most of these opportunities. And that's what we did. So we'll catch up here in a few days and just talk through everything and what do we need to do better and so on and so forth and go from there. But haven't had those conversations yet. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, both of them, to this point in their career, I think they're each had their signature season, so to speak, in 2023, and then 24 for different reasons kind of got off the rails for each of them, and then this year, perhaps again for different or similar reasons, just couldn't find it right. To the not entirely, but really struggled to recapture that form we saw when they were 20 in that 2023 season. So the two people that care tremendously about their craft, their profession, and badly want to perform better for their teammates and their fans than what they did this year. That we need to look at them and figure out if what type of there needs to be improvement. They know that, we know that, within our outfield mix. We need to determine just how much it's reasonable to expect from each of them and how it all fits together. So